Well, hello there, everybody. I'm K-Mac Travis Berardi. That is Hayden Gray, and we are back for another season of Stat Leaders. Last year we had our football stat leaders. We did basketball for girls and boys as well, but you know what? It was so popular that we're back for another season of it. And if you're just now joining in on the OH Report, because so many people have started to follow us over the last year, and we thank you for doing that. Each week, probably on a Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to break down our passing, receiving, and rushing leaders. That goes by, total yards, yards per carry, touchdowns, receptions, things like that. But in the 10 weeks to come, we will have updates, and by the end of that, we will have a champion. And you know what? Speaking of champions, we have some guys coming back that were in our top 10. So let's get right into it. This is a preview, so we're going to preview 3 players that were on the top 10 last year, and then 2 more that, we think might make a mark in North Central Ohio this year. So let's get right to it. First, the quarterbacks, Hayden, and leading the way, Hayden Shadown from River Valley. River Valley, one of those teams that they could be a dark horse in the MOAC this upcoming season with the likes of Highland coming in. You have Clear Fork, you have Shelby, you have other teams, but Shadown, one of our top passers last season. He threw for 2,748 yards, 22 touchdowns, and a 57% completion percentage, Hayden.
Yeah, I think he was one of those guys last year that just it was a quarterback-heavy area last year. I think there's a little bit of question marks at that QB position for teams in the area this year, so maybe one of those years Hayden Shadown could find himself at the top half of our list for multiple weeks and compete maybe for that championship spot.
Yeah, a River Valley team, like I said, they're a dark horse this upcoming season. We'll just have to see what they have in store. Another player to watch, I believe, Braden Mitchell from South Central. He was lighting it up the first few weeks of the season. He was up in the top 5 most of the year, but finished 6th. Brandon, the 6th leading passer, 2,253 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 66% completion percentage. One of his receivers graduate, but he has another couple other guys that can come back and make him a big playmaker once again. In the Firelands Conference said, hey, South Central, it's top heavy, has 2 good teams in Crestview and St. Paul each year, but maybe South Central with him, they can make a run at it.
Yeah, they could maybe upset some people and, be that underdog team coming out of the Firelands. A lot of attention on those top 2 teams, St. Paul and Crestview, as you said, so maybe they can slide under the radar and make some noise.
So yeah, our 6th leading passer, Brandon Mitchell there. And our third player to watch, Caden Holman of Upper Sandusky, also in the top 10 last year, 2,246 yards passing. That's good enough for 7th last year. 17 touchdowns, 58% completion percentage for an Upper Sandusky team that, hey, they could do some things this year.
Yeah, just 3 wins last year, but I know we've said it before on the preview show. Garrett has talked about it a lot. Could be one of those teams to look out for as well, and another one of those underdogs that kind of is appreciating being out of the headlines and just doing their hard work, on the ground.
And now 2 players we think has a chance of making this top 10, especially at the end of the season. First, Mansfield Seniors Duke Reese.
For sure.
They have really high hopes over there at TY Tiger Country. He has 2 very large receivers on each side, 2 tall guys he can just throw it up to. He has some skill positions, some slot receivers that are fast. He has some running backs as well that can be very elusive. So, Duke, I've seen him in some scrimmages. He can thread the needle when he needs to. So if he can keep that good mindset coming in his first year as QB1 for the TY Tigers, this team, they could go places.
Yeah, they could. I know a lot of those guys are excited, as you said. I think that they've just been really spending that time over the summer getting acclimated to a new quarterback after having Brock Hill all those years, and I think it's exciting, and that excitement may turn into some good productivity on the field.
Yeah, very exciting, especially I'm excited to see what he does against Massillon Week 3, live and free on the OH Report. And our final quarterback to watch, one Victor Skoog down at Clear Fork, another team that I have really high hopes for, and that one of those quarterbacks, they can run, he can pass, he can be elusive, all of those pieces along with that defense at Clear Fork. My favorite to win the MOAC.
Yeah, I think they're going to give themselves a good shot with Skoog at the reins, and he's one of those guys that I wouldn't even be surprised to see maybe on our rushing list as well with how dynamic he is.
All right, let's move on to the running backs, the guys that, get down in the trenches and just, muscle you those yards. And our first player to watch, the number 2 rusher in all of the area last year. That is Dane Nauman, who lost the number 1 spot in the final week to Lincoln Mollenkoff, who has graduated, but he was atop the list for most of the season. Last year, 2,108 yards rushing, 20 touchdowns, 9.9 yards per carry, but he's back. Now they're in the MOAC. Can he do it again in that little bit of a tougher conference defensively?
It'll come down to his offensive line if they're going to be able to battle in the trenches the way people do play in the MOAC, and we'll have to see if he's going to be able to adjust to that as well, but I do expect big things out of him again this year.
Another player coming out of that KMAC now, one Maxton Lauer of Northmore, the junior last year, 1,303 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 yards per carry. Now, they lost some of their big offensive linemen last year. They lost a couple receivers, a quarterback, but, he's the guy that's going to be getting the ball most of the time for the Northmore Golden Knights, and if they need to be successful, he needs to be successful.
Yeah, I think Max is going to they're going to have to find a way to possibly get him some breaks on defense this year, maybe. He's one of those guys that starts both sides of the ball, and, offensively, they're not going to be as dynamic this year, possibly. So getting him the ball as much as possible is going to be what they need to do to succeed. So we'll see if he's able to keep up, and, stamina. He's a strong kid. We'll see if he's able to get it done again this year. Yeah, the 5th leading rusher in all the area last season. We'll see if he can get the top 5 again. Another one in the top 10, one Shea Sparks from Plymouth. 1,202 rushing yards last year, 19 touchdowns, 8 yards per carry, and some people are thinking that with him back, Plymouth chance of cracking that top 3. You never know if things go their way. Maybe a top 2 finish in the Firelands Conference, and most importantly, maybe a playoff appearance once again for them. Yeah, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility. I'm not going to say I know as much about Plymouth as I do other teams, but I know we saw what Shea Sparks can do last year, and sometimes you have that one guy. If your defense can do their job offensively, if you can get him opportunities and get that push on the front line like we talked about, you can give yourself a chance.
Now to our players to watch, and my first one's kind of a group, because who knows which one's going to get main carries, but it's the group of Wade Bolin and Addison Raymer of the Crestview Cougars. They lost a stud last year, the top 10 rusher in the area, but they just get these kids back once again with a team with, once again, really high hopes. This Crestview squad, they get a chance to do some special things, but if they can stay focused throughout the season, if they can do what they need to, one of these two, maybe both of them, will crack the top 10 this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think Coach Haverdale is going to utilize them both to the best, and whatever's best helping the team on that night. It's exciting to see Addison Raymer taking on this position. He's been explosive on the outside for them for many years. And then obviously our resident Crestview experts, G-Man and Storm, been telling us, Bolin's got a good chance to be one of those next great Crestview Cougar great running backs. So I'm excited to see this combo.
And finally, somebody that we've seen last year, but because of injuries had to play different positions, that's Tegan Rule at Fredericktown. They got their quarterback healthy once again. They got Cade Carpenter going back to wide receiver. He's going back at running back, and especially in the KMAC where other teams have lost players, this Fredericktown squad, they got a lot of guys back, and they have high hopes this season. And if they can get that offense going like they want to, Tegan Rule could be one of those big pieces.
Yeah, Rule's another one of those explosive players, and I think Coach Hartley and all of them would agree they're happy to have people back in the positions they belong and kind of their natural positions. So I think that being said, everyone's going to excel a little bit more for the Freddies, so excited to see what Tegan can do this season.
All right, and finally to the wide receivers, and one guy that you and I are both, once again, really high on, and that's Zayden Fry of Mohawk. Zayden, 949 yards receiving last season, 8 touchdowns, 41 receptions for a Mohawk squad to get a couple big playmakers. We will see them, they kick off on a Thursday against Tiffin Calvert, and then the season gets going. But Zayden Fry, if they want to get to the playoffs this season, he's the guy that has to get them there.
Yeah, I think that they can it's a lot of pressure to put on one guy, but we've seen what successful wide receiver group can do for you. And if you have an experienced guy like him, that receiver group, that receiver room can kind of learn. So it may not happen week 1, week 2, but I think that they may all be able to take something from Fry, and maybe we'll see the Mohawk receiving group be one of those better in the N10.
Another one in this top 10, we kind of mentioned him earlier with Brandon Mitchell, but it's his number 1 wide receiver this season, Carson Music, 823 yards receiving last year, 8 touchdowns, but he had 62 receptions, so he was one of the go-to receivers in that Firelands Conference squad up at South Central. And, he could be a 1,000-yard receiver going up from number 2 to number 1 on that list.
Yeah, when you see both of these guys together, you can tell if they're both on our list, and I think they were consistently throughout the season that they've got a good connection. So I think a whole nother offseason and summer of work together is just going to allow these guys to come back and hopefully not, have to get back into the groove too fast. I think they'll just kind of be right there already and get ready to go, and we'll see if he's able to compete for that number 1 spot.
And our final returner from the wide receivers in the top 10, Jonathan Metzger. He jumped into that top 10 the last couple of weeks from the Ashland Arrows as they tried to make that playoff run. 800 yards exactly receiving last year, 5 touchdowns, but once again, 56 receptions. With him coming back, that Ashland squad, they're going to rely on him a lot this season offensively and look to maybe, get up towards the top of the OCC once again.
Yeah, Metzger, one of those guys, another double sport athlete. The kid's just a really, really strong athlete. I've watched him wrestle, watched him play football, and I think he's going to, if he can use that and channel that aggressiveness on the outside, gives him a good shot to get over that 1,000-yard barrier this year.
All right, now to our 2 to watch, and the first one, Isaiah Ramsey of Shelby. He is now the main guy. How many big players from Shelby have graduated last year? You got quarterback, your top 2 or 3 receivers, running back, lineman. So, Isaiah comes back this season, and he's going to be looked on a lot more than last season.
Yeah, he'll have a lot of pressure on him, and when you do lose some of those other weapons, as you mentioned, last year was great for him as arguably, being the luxury of being the 3rd best wide receiver on the team, not getting so much of that heavy attention to detail from the defense. This year, he's probably going to be double-teamed a lot, looked at a lot, and with some questions at the quarterback position, there's still some, question marks above my head on this one, but I think he's an explosive kid. He's quick, and I'll be happy to see the development since last year for him.
And finally, another one of those Fredericktown Freddies that had to play some quarterback, some running back last year, but he's back at that wide receiver position, and that is one Cade Carpenter. The guy excels in every sport. He's one of the best pitchers in the area, great basketball player as well, but wide receiver, he's the one that can get up there. He has the athletic talent to out-jump some players, outrun some players, and he's going to be, along with Rule, one of those 1-2 punches for Fredericktown, who wants to make another one of those runs, especially towards the playoffs this season.
Yeah, I was going to say with Cade too, he's one of those few guys that that I do run into out of practice that is considerably taller than me, and I kind of have to look up at. And I think that him having to take over some of the quarterback plays last year too for Ben Mass, sometimes once you start having to learn how to see as a quarterback, may help you as a wide receiver as well. So I'm excited to see him back out at his natural position as well.
And you know what, Hayden? I am excited to see who makes this list.
Me too.
We'll see. Maybe if we get enough in for week 1, we might do something. But if not, we'll wait until like week 2 or 3 to really get things going. But I'm just excited for football to get going, and it starts off Thursday night tonight.
Yeah,
we have 2 games live and free for you, and then another highlight too. But we have our live and free games. Crestview Cougars will see what they can do against Loudonville, a new member of the KMAC, and then also we will have Mohawk at Tiffin Calvert. And then we have a highlight as well?
Yeah, I'll be over for Lexington at Ontario.
The backyard rivalry renewed once again. So, just kicking things off, but we are excited to be with you every week. But for now, he's Hayden, I'm Travis, and we out.